We are so back. Finally, there's some more news on the Swain rework. Not gonna lie, the past month, it hasn't felt too good to play Swain. I've been kind of feeling like this guy. But Freak just uploaded a video today where he talks over Swain changes. I'm gonna watch it, react to it, share my thoughts, and I'm just very, very excited to see what this has in store for us, guys. Let's begin.
Let's talk about Swain, why we did work on Swain, and what we're trying to essentially fix. So, Swain has two core problems. Essentially, it's oversimplifying it, but it's a way to simplify it down to one sentence, which is that Swain wins a lot of games in mid lane and bot lane.
True.
But he feels really bad to play there. Certainly, mages are not common down in bot lane, and that's fine. He's been one of the higher win rate mages down there for a while. Whatever, we tend to be willing to accept like 53.
He has been really good in APC role. That is his best role currently.
3-ish% win rates to bot lane mages because they're just never popular enough to take over the game, and so it's not a pressing issue, and it hurts everyone else who plays the champion, you know, when like 5% of his plays are in bot lane. So we acknowledge that. It's fine, whatever, we deal with it. But the other thing is that Swain's largest audience has moved over to support, but he's not very good there. So the weird juxtaposition is that he's a lot more performant in mid lane and bot lane, despite the fact that he's very performant, he feels really bad to play in those roles.
True.
At least mid lane specifically, where usually 53% win rate mid laners are pretty nice and people are happy to play them. Doesn't seem to be the case here for Swain. And then in support, we don't really have room to buff him because 53% is really our limit on acceptable win rates. Unless they're incredibly, incredibly easy. Swain is not really that. And so even though Swain is a pretty weak support by win rate, we don't have room to buff him because he's actually already very performant in mid and bot. And so
that is very true. Swain win rates has always been a bit weird. If you look at the percent play rate, 45, almost half of the player base plays Swain support. And I think if you go like all ranks, it's even higher. Yeah, like 65% support. But this role, like overall, like it's clearly higher win rate mid, higher win rate bot. Do you know what I mean? Like support is his weakest role and it has been for ages now. But still has the highest play base. So it's just hard to buff him in support. He already has like 53, 55 on mid and bot, right? But there's people don't really play him. Like it's low play rate. Anyways.
So this is a sort of
I get the problem. I really get the problem.
Solve, and so can't just do some balance changes, and so hence we spin up a project and do larger work onto him. So goal 0 is to fix both these problems. That's not very helpful though. Let's do some stuff, right? So goal 1 is to fix the mid/bot satisfaction. Now again, we don't have any win rate budget here, and so it's what trade-offs can we make to have Swain feel better to play without raising win rate, because we're at win rate cap. And if we get to the point where like mid Swain feels great and he's a popular mid laner and we can balance him around having a normal win rate, that's still a win, because we get a satisfying mid laner who's been bribed with a bunch of win rate, and we get a mid laner back, and that's a good thing. The secondary goal, which would also be a good thing, is just to give some strict win rate to Swain support. If we're ceilinged on how much we can buff him, then can we move power around to make support just stronger, keeping mid and bot the same, so that support Swain can just feel good for the players who are playing him, which is the majority of Swain players.
True.
And ideally get both of these. But honestly, if we only get one of them, like mid and bot Swain have the same pick rate with the same win rate, okay, darn, that's too bad, but at least we had this large number of support Swain players have a better performing champion. That's pretty good. Or maybe we can't make support Swain really any better, but mid and bot, like mid lane especially, mid lane Swain feels better to play and his player base comes back, because support Swain was only a thing like after the most recent rework, even though the relative win rates comparing mid to support weren't really that different across time. If we get mid lane Swain players back, that's also a win. Great, wonderful stuff, right? So either one is fine, but ideally both, in order to make these goals a reality. So there's some really easy stuff, which is just simply moving base stats. That's primarily bringing down base mana and bringing up mana regen. It's a very easy lever. We know it's support skewed because support item has % more mana regen on it. It's really, really easy. You can do it to everybody. Cool, that's an easy one. The next one, though, is generally speaking, PvP power up, PvE power down. So better, more reliable tools for dealing with enemy champions, weaker wave clear somewhat. Sure, right? This is the kind of thing where every version of Swain will use PvP power, but only mid lane Swain and bot lane Swain uses the PvE power, the pushing power. So
that makes sense. So like support Swain loves PvP power, PvE means player versus the computer, right? So this is basically like when you're fighting minions, right? So clearing waves with Q, that kind of stuff. Damaging the wave with E, right? While PvP support more likes that. Of course, mid lane also likes PvP power, but I get this. I get these kind of tactics, how to buff and nerf from the balance team.
That's an easy way to just kind of shift things around without really much to think about, right? It's just very, very simple power shifts, things you could do in, 40 minutes or whatever, and you'd probably be okay. Yeah, those are there because they're really free and it's not a really big problem. Next thing is another one's really, really easy, which is just simply closing the gap on W max and E max. So zooming out a little bit here, one difficulty with Swain is that he basically only has about 1.5 spells.
That's what I've been saying, legit. Some matchups, it legit feels like you have one ability, and that's Q, and that's not even that good because it's long range, so it's having like a 40-50% AP ratio when you're hitting Syndra with it. Like, do you know what I mean? That is so true, Freak. Honestly, I agree. Sometimes it legit just feels like you only have Q. You can't get passive because you can't land your E. You can't land your E because you're against Syndra range and she can dodge anything and she's 1000 LP, do you know what I mean? And you can't land W because you don't land your E. So you have Q and maybe ultimate. Like, that is so true. That is so true.
His W is extremely, extremely unreliable, but eats up a lot of his power budget.
Mm.
And his E is also extremely unreliable and doesn't really work in his favor, but is one of his 4 active skills. And so he's really left with, I have a Q and an R. And that doesn't make him a very satisfying champion.
True.
Now, there was not...
That is his main problem. I've been saying this for the people who say, oh, Swain doesn't need a rework. Guys, try playing Swain mid lane against that 1000 LP mid laner. I promise it will not be fun at all. E and W are just so unreliable and they're so easy to play around. He feels really, really bad when you're up against the better players. Like, Swain just falls off really, really hard the higher you get, and that really sucks.
Not make a new spell, get new particles for all of his skins, get new animations, get new sound effects. That wasn't scoped out for this project. If I had a killer new W and I was like, yo, get me an animator, get me a VFX, get me some stuff, we'll ship it in 15.1 or something, yeah, we could have found that, right? Like, if the project is good enough, we'll get the resources and we'll make trade-offs somewhere else in League of Legends. Something else will get pushed back or whatever, or delayed or reprioritized or something. I didn't think about making a new spell. I thought I could do a decent job with this without making a new spell.
Yeah.
Though probably the best version of Swain replaces W. My opinion, the best version of Swain is that he embraces being a battle mage. He embraces being a relatively short range champion, and he's really good in that range. You can outrange him. You can beat him with poke in the way that like Xerath beats Azir and that kind of stuff. Like, sure, right? But he's going to be tanky, battle mage, short range, useful, but also more reliable. Not only
I like that, but I get what he means though. The W is kind of out of place from the battle mage identity. It's more like a tactician kind of thing, do you know what I mean? So if he wants like to win the battle mage, then W kind of has to be drastically changed or like made a new spell. I get that. I personally really like W, for example. I love stopping bases, you know that, guys. I think it's a great spell, it's very unique. Excited to see what they do with it.
In his individual spells are more reliable, but also he has fewer sharply horrible matchups. So that Swain...
That is so true. The thing about Swain is his good matchups are really good. Like the melee matchups, they're amazing. And then you have the other side of the coin, where his long range against long range champs like Syndra or Orianna, it's very, very bad. Like there's no like in between, there's no like medium. It's just either you get beat up completely or you beat them up completely.
Can be a more reliable champion. Anyway, one thing about this is that W is not a battle mage spell. Now, some Swain players love the global map tactician thing, and so this is not trying to kill W max and making it strictly worse than E, but it's bringing the gap closer because ranks in E are useless. There's no cooldown scaling. The damage scaling is fine, but W gives you cooldown and range and damage and CC, and like there's literally 6 levels on Swain W, and I think there's 2 or 1 on Swain E.
That is very true, guys. If you still don't know, like look how much value you get from putting points in W. They get a little more expensive, but you get less cooldown, longer range, more damage, more slow, more reveal duration. Do you know what I mean? Like you get so much value when you put points in W. What happens when you put points in E? No cooldown reduction. Oh, you get 45 damage in total from putting a full point in E. Instead, you can get 6 different things, yeah? Like, that's the difference. Like, you should never max E right now. It's never max E second. Always max E last. Always max W second, right? That's what he's talking about. He wants to bring the gap closer. Because there's legit no point in putting points in E right now.
There's E1 and E2 damage, and that's silly. So
I'm excited to see the numbers.
Again, for
what
a
they're
lot of
gonna
this,
do.
it's kind of simple number changes, but it's making Emax or Wmax a bit closer so that he can play QE Swain and be more of a battle mage using the tools that are more in the sort of short to mid-range play style here. And so it's moving some power around to let that be a reality. One thing that's worth noting is that support Swain, a decent portion of support Swain players actually max E second, and a couple of them max E first, because it might have made sense that you could like realize why you would max the root in the way that Morgana maxes her root. And so there's a little bit of winner you can claw back there as well by making that skill order not a complete trap. Again, kind of minor stuff here. Swain is the kind of character where I think you can defensively argue for W second and E second, and when that's true, I would like it to not be a trap. There's some where it's like, of course I wouldn't max W first on Poppy. And see, we don't make that a thing. That's totally okay. You don't max shield first Mordekaiser. No one thinks that. It's fine. Singe skill order, very obvious. We're not going to change that. That's totally reasonable. But when they make sense to be debatable, I think it is useful for pretty little amounts of effort.
Makes sense.
To bring those closer together. And so what's happening here? The really big thing, though, and of course, here's the battle mage shaping earlier, whatever. The really big thing, though, is reliability increased. This is both his Q and his E are much more, I would say, reliable as tools. We'll talk about them in individual sections, but this has been, I would say, arguably the biggest tactic bucket here in terms of making the experience of playing Swain better. I'm
amazing.
What we have here, fingers crossed, but I think it's pretty good. And sort of the final thing that is pretty reasonable is the base kit is going to be a larger portion of Swain's total power budget, and the ultimate is going to be a smaller portion of Swain's total power budget.
I actually kind of like that, because right now I feel like you're forced to build all these items that give effects, because your ult is so good at applying it, right? You have ult all the time, it's very low cooldown. It's kind of a big part of Swain. When you don't have ult, you're kind of like useless in a way. I like this idea of shifting more power to the base kit. So he's also a champion without ultimate, right? And he maybe not have to rely too much on having Rylai and slowing everyone with his ultimate, you know what I mean?
Although there's some shifts here that I think actually make him more fun and more interesting during the ultimate. And
amazing.
Being less of a just Riley's Leandri's applicator.
Amazing,
so let's
man.
break them down, sort of ability by ability. What are we doing to Swain? So there's E. E's damage is now being moved only to the explosion. So this was trailing into PvE down, PvP up, but also reliability up. So the explosion, if you don't know how Swain E is scripted, right, the hand comes out, and on live that deals damage, and actually deals about 2/3 of the damage of the ability on the way out, and then at the end, if there's an enemy in the circle, it explodes and deals the AoE root. If there's an enemy inside the circle, it explodes and deals the AoE root, and that root is like 1/3 of the damage. It's very, very, very low. Now, what's interesting is in many PvP interactions, only the explosion deals damage, because the explosion radius is larger than the E1 hitbox radius.
You extend another wave, guys.
Very, very likely that even if the champion is what's triggering the explosion here, you're only hitting them with E2. Whereas minions don't move, and so it's very, very easy to always hit minions with E1 and E2. So you deal full damage to caster minions, you do 2/3 the damage to melee minions, and you often deal 1/3 of the damage to champions. By moving it into the explosion, we can make the impact feel a lot better, deal a lot more damage, and then you'll always get max damage all the time. Now it's only ever going to hit 3 minions. Okay, fine, right? Again, PvE interactions are down.
Yeah, that's fine. We don't have to get damage on minions from the E. That's fine. We just do the Qs. I really like this. I really like this angle.
Yep. You're never going to hit melees for more damage.
I think it's really smart.
But you're going to have a much more reliable tool for dealing meaningful damage to champions. It's going to be dealing, again, like 3 to 4 times the damage in champion interactions.
Wait, that's amazing. If they just move, like, all the damage kind of to the explosion, I really get what he's meaning here. I really do. So the explosion is going to hit much harder. Because it's also, you always hit the enemy with the explosion, but you don't always hit them with the E1.
In a lot of your E-casts. Next thing
That's
is
consistency.
The E1
We
missile.
like
As
that.
I said, when the E1 missile ends, it explodes, or will try to explode if someone's in the radius. This missile is faster.
Okay.
It feels way more reliable. From local testing, so the way that Swain E1 works on live right now is the missile acceleration is handled in scripting, and that ends up being a little bit error prone, which means that your E1 will reach max duration a couple frames early, a couple frames late, based on just random who knows what.
The cosmic race. The cosmic race.
Even
It's okay.
in single player, where it's my machine running the server and I'm just hitting Antibot here, it's still variant, and it's likely more variant on live. I don't know. I can't put debug printouts onto a live server and then get them. Not doing that. But in single player testing, it's very clearly not reliable. And so the nice thing is, as a Swain player, you have more agency. Your E will always explode in 0.6 seconds instead of up to plus or minus an extra tenth of a second.
Amazing.
0.5 to 0.7 was theoretically possible, though the tenth of a second off was really, really, really rare. You were often off by 1-2 frames, though. And so it's not faster in the average case, but it's much, much, much more reliable.
Nice.
And just visually, the missile looks faster because of changing the acceleration to be done in engine and picking a different starting and stopping value, and it just looks faster.
I mean, I'm not a programmer, but it sounds really nice. We just want the reliability. We don't want no mumbo jumbo. Like sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's slower, like whatever. Do you know what I mean? I like this change, Freak. I do.
Even though the actual hit rate is the same mean as before. E2, however, is much faster. The total round trip time is being decreased by like 15 to 20%. So like E.
Okay, 15 to 20%. Well, that's some more speed, and we can still walk with E. I really like this change so far.
Going back to you, if like Yasuo or Yone is in your face, that's 15 to 20% faster. Yeah, you're not getting the E1 damage on the way out. You have to wait till it comes back. But the missile speed is so much faster. It is like very clearly, reliably better.
Nice.
Two more things. The E2 missile starts much faster in the acceleration, which means that these like, if you're like here and I'm throwing E past you, this trip back is much, 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 much faster. And so
huge.
That's a really, really big deal, because if you're like 700 range away and I've got to wait for E to come back, that's a significant increase in my reliability. Also,
yeah, legit. When Yasuo is in your face and you throw out E, it legit takes, I don't know, 10 years for it to get back, and he probably just sidesteps it just by taking one step to the right. Do you know what I mean?
So, the E2 hitbox is
I like
this.
this.
A little bit.
I like
this. It is as wide as is reasonable for that missile.
And they make it wider.
Can't go anywhere.
They make it wider hitbox as well. It's gonna be so easy to walk with E now. Do you know what I mean? I'm actually gonna be able to reliably land the walk with E now, I think.
Without growing the VFX. I don't think growing the VFX is reasonable here. And so there's like 10 or 20 or something extra radius on the E2 missile, plus the missile speed. Like, yeah, technically, if you literally always got the median hit timing and you always got the E1 explosion and you always hit E1 like the explosion, which is really fraudulent, it's technically the same spell. That's fraudulent. In every other interaction, or almost every interaction, the spell is literally just stronger. More damage, technically not a better cooldown, but our playtesting estimates are that this spell hits 60% more often than before.
%60%. We're so back. We're so back, guys. Legit. It's demon time. 60% more ease. Do you know what I mean? Holy.
So Swain E is actually 60% more spell, and the cooldown is nerfed much less than 60%. So E is, as far as we can tell, strictly buffed, essentially, in PvP interactions. It's at least
amazing.
Positive. And this, I think, is the set of changes that carries the most weight in terms of making Swain feel better.
Amazing, Freak, amazing. I really like those changes. He also noticed, if you didn't notice, guys, he said they're gonna nerf the cooldown, so E's gonna have longer cooldown, but that is fine. That is fine, legit. He has to make it land, legit. I just wanna land it.
Next is Swain R. Biggest thing, multiple demon flares.
Holy. Demon time.
Your first demon flare is still 2 seconds.
Okay.
But every 10 seconds affected by ability haste, you get
every 10 seconds, and you can affect it by ability haste. So I assume it scales the same maybe as ability haste. So if you have 100 ability haste, if you didn't know, 100 ability haste gives 50% CDR. If it works like that, it would be like, okay, 100 haste, then you have a demon flare every 5 seconds. Wait, okay, I'm not sure if it scales like that, but just hypothetically, holy,
Get another
I
demon
like
flare.
that.
So
I
if
do
you
like that
can
it scales
keep
with
your ult
haste.
for like 10 seconds. This is like assuming you're getting like a black fire or something, right? So 2 seconds, then plus another 7.5 to 8, you will get a second demon flare, which means your ult has a repeated crowd control profile, bringing a little bit less need onto the like Rileys and whatnot.
That is true, honestly. If we have like very low CD demon flare, we can just use that slow to slow everyone, right? So we can stick onto them. We can use that slow, so it's easier to land E. With E being easier to land, we don't need Rylai's as much. Do you know what I mean? I really like this direction. I do. I really do.
You are probably still going to do a lot of Riley's Leandry's builds, but by increasing the haste appetite, not only for the ult cooldown itself, ult cooldown now starts when you cast it, not when it ends.
Ult cooldown starts when you cast it and not when it ends. So that means if you have your ult active for 1 minute, 1 minute of the timer will already have passed on the CD. I love that, legit. I really like that change.
But the Demon Flare Recycle is also scaling with ability haste. And yes, that'll scale with ulti haste as well. So Malignants will give you more Demon Flares. If you want to go do Malignants, Cosmic Drive, High Haste, Demon Flare spam, Swain, you can do that. That is there for you, right? That is a build. You can go get 80 ulti haste and spam that crap. Obviously, he already wants ulti hunter. It's literally even better for him now because it scales the Demon Flare refresh and it gets his ulti back via ulti haste actually working the second you press R. Which means if you somehow get a 30-second long ulti, that cooldown's gonna be real short when you come out of it. That's obviously really
amazing.
Rare, but the high point is there. Now, I know a lot of Swain players are like, man, I really hate how much my power budget is tied up in R. Here's the thing. This is not the average case R, right? The average case R is still 5 seconds long, 1 Demon Flare, and those are weaker. That power has gone into your base kit, into your Q being better, into your E being better, and your W being a better 1-point wonder. At max, about the same spell. The average Swain R is actually weaker. The high roll Swain Rs feel a lot better. It is possible to get 3 Demon Flares in a team fight. It feels great to get 3 Demon Flares in a team fight.
So he's telling me it's demon time, basically. That's what he's saying.
It really does. It has been a pretty positive playtest point.
Okay.
And so once we got it in, we kept it.
See, I like this optimism, Freak. I do. I like you, bro. Seriously. I like Freak. I really do. He's cooking right now, I feel like. He's cooking.
Like, yep, this definitely works. Let's find the numbers that work. Yep, we're good. Okay. That said, of course, power has moved around. The baseline DPS and heal per second on R is lower.
Okay.
Because you're getting multiple Demon Flares.
Fair enough, fair enough.
The calculations for where this comes from is significantly AP ratio down to pay for AP ratios elsewhere, primarily in Q and E.
Okay, so AP ratios on ult is gonna be nerfed a bit, I think. But he's saying we get increased ratios on basic abilities. That's perfectly fine.
There is now a bonus HP ratio.
Nice. Actually, I always wanted an HP ratio somewhere in his kit, just because of his passive. It just kind of feels cool. I don't know. I like that. I like that change.
In the R healing,
okay.
This allows him
R
to
healing?
play a more defensive, more battle mage style build with something like a Spirit Visage. There's actually special casing for Spirit Visage in his R to play the heal per tick if he has it, and the ticks were too low otherwise. It's a really minor thing, but it exists technically, and that's still there. It's been kept. That's been in the scripting for years, but it's like it was there. It was an item that people thought he would run at some point, but overall, the R has. On average, worse scaling with ability rank. Specifically, cooldown is flat at 120 because you can hasten it through game time with simply getting ability haste. You don't have to use ability ranks.
Okay, so huge nerf to the cooldown on ult. It's gonna be just 120 seconds every rank. Right now it's 120 level 1 and it gets down to 60 at level 3. But again, the cooldown ticks down when you use it and while it's active. Plus, I mean, this is kind of fair, right? We're taking power out of ultimate, giving it to basic kit, getting multiple demon flares. I think it's fine. I think it's fine.
To do that anymore, but because again, your 10-second duration ulti or whatever is ticking in the background as cooldown, this ends up working out reasonably well. And the fact that your ulti has like an actual cooldown, it's not like 60 seconds or whatever late game, means we can, again, have the power budget to put that power elsewhere on the kit and not tie you so strongly to R. So again, numbers changes. The slow is a bit higher on Demon Flare as well. Again, multiple casts and whatnot. The point being,
Slow is higher on Demon Flare as well. Holy wait. That sounds really nice. That sounds really nice. We're gonna stick on to people, seriously. They won't get away from rework Swain E. You could maybe dodge the old one, but the new one is broken. I swear. It's time.
essentially with this kind of stuff is, though we still expect Riley's, Liandry's, Zhonya's to be a fairly common build and using like only runes to get ulti haste, the ability to play a high haste Cosmic Drive style build, the ability to play kind of high AP and rely more on base kit and using like QEW combos, those are getting opened up a little bit via the fact that these scaling getting moved around.
Yeah, for sure, honestly. I like that. We can go much more like Blackfire Cosmic builds. I think that build is gonna be really good, sounds like it. Haste looks really nice on Swain now. We can still get the ult down to fairly low. Demon Flare scales with haste now. E has longer cooldown. We also get that down, but it's like so much better now. Like I'm like right now I'm just imagining Blackfire Cosmic in current meta, like current patch.
We'll see if there really are multiple viable builds, but a lot more itemization options have been opened up through changes like this. All right, we then move on to pretty much the rest of the small stuff here because we're mostly done with the big stuff.
Okay.
As mentioned, shifting from base mana to mana regen is a just simple support skew thing. With E being so much more reliable, it was being landed again 50 to 60% more often in early lane. He was essentially having a really strong spell that had strong damage onto it. That was hitting really reliably, that was giving him 14 max health and healing for a ton, and the health delta on just landing a Swain E was like 120 for a rank 1 spell. That was honestly really hard to dodge, and so the total throughput of that spell felt too high, and so we chose to nerf passive per shard heal. We kept the max HP. He's going to get more max HP, he's going to land more E's.
Yeah.
He's going to deal more damage, he's going to land more E's and combo that into Q and W. That's all still there. But because of how health positive those trades were, had to do a compensation nerf onto passive healing. Base mana cost on Q is lower. So this is...
amazing. I mean, I'm just such a big fan right now. Seriously. I love these changes. I really do. E sounds so much better now. His kit sounds so much nicer to play. It's fine they nerf passive heal. I think that's okay. It seems like it's gonna be easier to land E, and when you land E, you're gonna usually have a positive trade. I love to hear that, because right now I feel like if you land E, which is very hard, then you might have an even trade against like a Syndra. Do you know what I mean?
Sort of wave clear satisfaction for mid Swain. You could just
Q cost is also very nice. I'm not sure what it's gonna get down to. Right now it's 65 at level 5, right? I think it's 40 at level 1. Getting that down, we can spam that more. Spam Q legit. We love that.
spam more Qs overall. This roughly compensates the base mana change a little bit. Like, this ends up being relatively power neutral, to be clear, on mid Swain. It's power positive on support Swain in the average case. So Q is just kind of free real estate. It's just cheaper. Congratulations, your primary wave clear is more spammable. Enjoy, you're going to be kind of feeling better. Q damage has been reshaped. The maximum shotgun damage on Q is 200%. On live, that scales with rank, essentially. Like, the per finger damage is distinct from the, like, you know, hit 1 damage, and so the shotgun ratio went from like 1.6 to 2.4x, like somewhere around there. Same thing with the AP ratio, it was like a little funky. This is basically Q has a better ratio on average.
Okay.
It has more minimum damage, aka Swain into ranged champions is a bit nicer, doing about 10% more damage, and Swain into pure melee champions is a bit worse, doing about 10% less damage. The reason
that's perfect. That's perfect. Make it more consistent, so it's not huge damage when you're close, and then very little damage when you're far away, because that just shifts the matchups to make them really, like, either really easy or really hard. Do you know what I mean? I like this change, I really do.
For this is simply to be like, hey, Swain can kind of only use his Q well. It's like, Swain into Syndra. Well, I can Q you for 140 damage. You can QE me for 300. I can never do anything because I can't land E and I can't land W.
So true.
This says, okay,
so
well, if I'm going to Q back at you...
He's literally like me. He's literally like me. I know what he means.
Again, like 10-15% stronger, it's much better at this like mid-range, we're trading back and forth pattern. I can at least get some chip damage on you. And just trying to make sure that like the breadth of his matchups, he's got more completely not trash matchups. But at the end of the day, Swain on live can kind of only beat melee champions. Like you pick Swain support and Swain bot lane when you see a Nautilus and you're like, I can't lose the game. I'm anti-melee. And they play an enchanter and you're like, I don't exist. And
That's so true.
Softening that a little bit allows him to have a better matchup spread and not be quite as sharp. I think this is generally like slightly positive for League overall, but in this case, positive for Swain. W is just compressed. Essentially, the slow duration is slightly lower.
Okay.
The slow potency is up, especially ranks 1 through 4.
Okay.
And just like a couple of things like the reveal duration's been flattened to be like same at all ranks because who's ranking this for reveal duration. But essentially means that there's slightly weaker rank incentives on W, and there are new rank incentives on E. Cooldown scales with rank, damage scales about the same with rank, but because more reliable, getting more E's is a pretty big deal.
I like that though. I like that. We might max E secondary. I don't know. It sounds kind of good getting lower cooldown and more damage if it's so much more reliable on E. Do you know what I mean?
And again, generally speaking, higher ratios, especially on E, on Q, siphoned away from R for the most part.
That's amazing. I mean, right now, you won't even believe this, but Swain's E AP ratios is literally 50% if you land both of the E1, E2. What? 50%? Legit, that's legit nothing. That's nice, they're buffing this one, and they said also buffing AP ratios on Q. So right now it's 80%. I'm not sure what they're thinking, maybe 90%. We'll see, okay, it sounds really good. I really like these changes.
And that is kind of the overview of changes to Swain. There's some minor things not mentioned here. It's not really worth talking about, but it's basically more reliable E, multiple Demon Flare on R. Q is more reliable long range. W is better at ranks 1 through 3, basically, and bringing a lot of things closer together. So this has tested pretty positively. We are happy to ship it. If the tuning is wrong, we will, of course, retune as needed, but hopefully a positive experience for Swain players, mid, and support.
Definitely, I think it will be, Mr. Freak. I think it will be. I really like these changes. I really, really do. Q reliable, E more reliable, more damage shifted to the base kit. I'm fine with the ult nerfs, multiple Demon Flare sounds really cool. Very, very excited for these changes. Okay, he has nothing more to say. Amazing, amazing. I think these changes are gonna be very, very nice, because honestly, Swain has been feeling kind of rough lately. He really has. Balancing him out so he's more flexible if he's against range comps or melee comps. I love that. I'm so excited, especially to try like the new E. It's gonna hit more. It's gonna be like more damage on the explosion. Like it's gonna feel really nice if it's more like more ratios. Like we hit E, boom, we're gonna hit them really hard, and we might not be as reliable on the ultimate anymore, right? I really love these changes, guys. I think they're very good for Swain. I think Freak is cooking for sure here. We need to see the numbers as well. We haven't seen those yet. This is just a video dropped today, but I have heard rumors that Swain Rework here is gonna go live on PBE very soon, and I will be there instantly and start testing, okay? And I will upload videos, don't worry about it. Basically, it's scheduled for patch 14.21. If you didn't know, right now 14.20 starts like tomorrow-ish. So it's gonna be 14 days it goes live, but it's gonna be on PBE, which is like a test server, very shortly, and I'll be there testing it out. Very excited to see the numbers. This looks amazing. Swain is honestly saved, okay? I really like these changes. I can't wait to play him. That's my thoughts and reaction on this video. Thank you so much for watching, guys. And I wish you all a wonderful day. And enjoy playing some Swain, okay? Because he is legit the coolest champion in the game is Demon Time, do you know what I mean?